Greetings. Hello. Hey, it's Miss Christine here, and I'm so excited to have you here today on World Elephant Day, August 12th. Today, we are drawing the African elephants like we see in the picture behind us. Now, today I wanted to tell you the kind of materials I'm using. You might have something different, but I'm using this toned paper, which is wonderful for making it a lot quicker to draw something super quickly. I'm drawing on paper that's the same color as an elephant. So usually elephants are kind of a gray color or maybe sort of a warm brown, depending on if they're wet or dry or dusty or muddy. And so if you draw on a brown paper, and then if you just add some highlights and shadows with black and white charcoals or pastel pencils, or even crayons, then your elephant almost draws itself. So yeah, that's what we're using. So you might just have pencils or you might have nothing at all. That's okay. You can just watch. And once you get your materials, you can watch the replay again. So I'm using these charcoal pencils, which are nice and dark so that you can see them pretty easily. And so I'm going to make this bigger. Let's look at a couple real elephants first, and then we'll draw one together from this handout. Here's two elephants, and you can see the difference. This is an adult, and this is a baby. And yeah, and so you can see they have different proportions. And I'm going to draw on them a little bit so we can notice. Again, to draw something more like a cartoon, you have to accentuate some things, but a lot of the things are going to be the same, especially the proportions, except for places in the eye and the mouth. But we'll talk about that later. So let's just look at these real ones first. So we're going to make them realistic first, and then we're going to make them more sassy looking. This is a sassier one, sort of. Here's a big adult male. Okay, and so you may have grown up with a cartoon elephants. Tell me in the chat box, what's the most famous elephant that you know of? When I was growing up, my parents would read me stories of like Babar, the elephant, or Horton. And then when I was growing up in the 70s, there was Mr. Snuffleupagus. And so there's been lots of famous elephants. And if you watch movies like the Lion King, there's some famous elephants like the big stampede of elephants when the lions were trying to get away from the mean lions. Anyway, so again, before you can draw something realistically, you have to understand its basic shapes and proportions. And so I'm just going to draw right on top of this for a minute here. But basically, they have this triangular face and kind of a bump here. And then their snout can, of course, be in a lot of different positions. Here it's in the mouth, but it can be up or down. And then they have a big triangular ear, and a lot of people say that's sort of in the shape of Africa, which is backwards, might be backwards for you right now, but the shape of the continent of Africa. And then they have a really boxy, thick body with legs that are shorter than the body. And they have a hump for the shoulder and a hump for the rump. And then they have a little tail, which is kind of pathetic. It doesn't have a big hairs on it like a beautiful horse's tail. They have a short hairs on it. And then their legs are really thick and stocky so that they can hold up their body. They can weigh, I think, over 9 tons, I read. So their legs are going to be really stocky. And then the babies, just like human babies or any animal baby, their heads are going to be bigger, and their eyes are going to be bigger in proportion to their body. So again, though, really stocky, and then these big pillar-like legs. And then their tail, of course, can be moving around in a lot of different directions. So their tail can be up or like this or like this. And their trunk can be like this. So we're going to look at those from a few different directions. Okay. And so And here's a few other examples of elephants. And if you got my hand out, you'll see some elephants in some pretty fun positions, like this one running towards its mom, the baby, and this one actually sitting down. And then this one is a male. He's really mad, and he's flapping his ears and moving his trunk. And this one is reaching really high because some elephants in Africa can actually stand on their back legs like the circus elephants do to reach a high leaves, especially during the drought when all the other leaves have been eaten. Okie dokie. So now we are going to first draw this realistic elephant. And again, please say hello in the chat box so I know you're here. I really love having live viewers. Let's see. Yeah, we got some other elephants here. Some other lots of images I've got of elephants. So this is a mama and calf. And so we're going to just draw them real quickly. And what I want you to do, actually, first, I want us to warm up because there's a tendency when you're especially first learning how to draw, or even if you've been drawing for a while, to be a little bit stiff. So I'd like you to have just a plain piece of paper and any kind of pencil, and I want you to warm up with me. All righty. Oops, I forgot this other light. I knew something was wrong. There, that might help. You wouldn't believe how many lights I have in the studio. So let's warm up. So I want us to try to be making nice and loose lines and light, loose lines. A lot of times people just put their wrists down kind of heavy and kind of go like this, almost like they're writing their name. And that's not how drawing is. Drawing is more light and loose. You want to have your wrist not leaning on the paper. And we're going to do a lot of drawing and not any erasing, okay? I want to really encourage you just to draw, get lots of lines down, be really messy and loose. So just some nice practice lines. And then some circles, and just see how my whole hand is moving, including my elbow. Nothing is resting heavy on the paper. And sometimes I put my little finger out like this to give me some more steadiness, because then my finger and my palm and my pencil are all touching the paper very lightly, and it gives me some more stability. So warming up with ovals, with squares, because an animal is just made up of circles and ovals and squares and triangles. So this is how I'd really love to have you working with me, okay? So none of this stuff where you're heavy like this, like you're writing a word, okay? We're going to be nice and light and loose and moving that pencil, okay? All right, I hope that was a good warm-up for you. To switch over to your right brain, where we're not writing words, we're drawing loosely. And so we're going to do this one. And I do have an eraser. I'm not going to use it. And I really encourage you not to either. I'm going to be drawing a little darker than I want you to, just so that you can see these lines. Let me see. Can you see that? Oh, sorry. I need to always be changing the brightness on here. I think you can, gosh, can you see that better? There we go. Okay. Now, I know you can't see many details of the elephant, and that's fine. We're just trying to work on the silhouette for now. So I'm going to make a box. And again, I don't want you to draw this dark. It's just for you to see it. So here's a box where my female's going to go, her whole body there. We're not going to draw the baby. You can draw that later for extra practice. So that's the box where the female is. And her head is like that triangle I mentioned before. And then she's got a trunk coming down. And her trunk's kind of going like that. And then she's got this big ear shaped like the continent of Africa. And it's kind of just a little bit longer than her head. And it's really good to start with a side view like this when you're drawing. And so you see, I'm not erasing. We're just going to darken the lines we like as we go. We're making this just really loose and sketchy looking, which I really love the energy of that. And then she's got her shoulders and then her rump. Actually, I got her too far over, didn't I? A little bit too far over. A little bit too far. And that's okay. I'm just going to make the ear smaller here. And then her rump. And then it's going to come down here. And her main body with the legs is right here under her ear. Okie dokie. And then her main body is really thick compared to things like a deer. Some of you may have drawn a deer with me the other day. Really different proportions. Look how thick that belly is compared to the legs. So they're big and thick and stocky, okay? And then she's got a big leg coming down here. And I'm just going to kind of make some symbols here. Not really realistic yet. And then a big leg here. And another leg here. She's walking a little bit there. And then her tail. You see they have this really pathetic little tail. And I'm going off the page a little bit because I started too far that way. But you can see it's okay. I'm not needing to erase, but I am needing to sharpen. I got a new sharpener. And with colored pencils and charcoals, it's important to have good sharpeners. In fact, I put the year here on this one, 2026, so that I know this is my nice sharp pencil. So for those of you who are just coming in, we're starting out with our basic proportions of a real life looking elephant, and then we'll make some more cartoony versions, but that's all based on understanding the basic proportions of a real elephant. So I'm going to start going a little bit darker here. Again, no erasing. I like the kind of energy of these lines. So you see she's got a bump on her head, and I read that females have more of this bump than the males. And then her trunk comes down and kind of comes here. They use their trunk for so many things, and it takes the babies a long time to learn how to use that to drink with and spray water with and manipulate things. Now she's got some pretty small tusks, and different elephants have different lengths of tusks. Of course, the older they get, the bigger they get, and some elephants are born without tusks. They don't have tusks. Ever. And then some have really big tusks. Okie dokie. And then her eye is right here, which is in a real elephant. It's going to be pretty small, but we're going to make a bigger one in our next drawing. That's going to be more like a cartoon because we're trying to aim more for this cartoony look in our next drawing. See, this one's more fun. And so is... I have too many pieces of paper here. Sorry, I'm trying to find these. There's our cartoon version. And we have another cartoon version that I've shown you here. Okay, so look how much different that is, but it's still realistic. Okay, still based on basic realistic proportions. So, again, tell me in the chat box if you've ever seen an elephant. Tell me how old you are. I'd love to know how old you are. If you're a kid, you don't have to tell me how old you are if you're an adult. And And if you've ever thought about being a cartoonist, that's the opening to their ear. Anyway, so let's get the rest of them here. I'm going to darken up. This back is kind of swayed, and then they have kind of a bump here, and then it comes down to their tail, and then really thick, strong pillar-like legs, not graceful like a deer. In fact, they can't even go faster than a walk. They don't, elephants don't have a trot. Okay, where was I? Oh, yeah, and then this big front leg, and gets kind of skinnier here, and then it kind of splays out. Their foot kind of splays out. And then they have this big elbow. That's their elbow right there, and that's their hip. Okay, and then the other leg, because she's walking with her baby, trying to keep up. If you've ever been a parent, you got to try to keep up with your babies. And then her belly is thickest down here, actually. So you see how I'm modifying my drawing, and I'm not trying to get it perfect. No erasing. I am just going with it. And you can always erase at the very end once you get most of your lines. There we go. So that's our sort of realistic version. And again, this is the African elephant. They have a bit different proportions, especially their ears being a lot bigger. Okay. So once you learn how to draw a basic elephant from the side, and you can understand what parts can move more than others, then you can get a more cartoony version. So like the ears can flap back and forth really expressively. And of course, the trunk can go way up, or it curl into their mouth, or it can go over here to itch their butt back. And their body here is not that flexible, but of course their legs are flexible to some extent. They can walk slowly or fast, but they don't have a trot. They don't go any faster than a fast walk. So their legs move a bit, and of course their tail can swish the flies away. There we go. Okay, any questions so far? So the more you observe an animal you want to learn how to draw, the better. In fact, if you, I read that the illustrators who work on movies, like the work on The Lion King, they actually went on a safari in Africa, and they drew real elephants out in nature and noticed all of the different behaviors they do, so that they could really make a more realistic version. Because again, you can't draw a cartoon until you understand the basics, the basic structure, and understanding where their different elbows are and knees. Sorry, I'm having the hardest time deciding which one of these to post. There we go. So knowing where their angles are for their elbow and their wrist and their toenails. They actually have toenails here. And knowing that they have a bend here and a bend here and here, then you know how you can move them more interestingly. Okay, so next, you can see we're going to chat a bit about how to make them more fun looking. So basically, here's my example. I'll make that bigger. Oops. Make that bigger. Okay. So this is based on a photograph I was working from. There's my photo. And this one was in a pretty fun position. So elephants do have some pretty fun things they can do. And I've shared some photos with you on the web page I gave you. But I've made it a little bit more fun in that I made the eye bigger and the mouth a little bit more expressive. And so that's just moving from a realistic but fun looking pose to making a little bit more cartoony. And then going a bit farther, here we go, is making it a lot more cartoony. So basically, to make an animal more of a cartoon, you really want to show movement. And I've got these little movement lines here. Let me switch over to my pencil. So I've got movement lines that are showing. I've got a bunch of dust because this elephant is super pissed off and he's stamping his foot, right? And then I've got some really sharp highlights and shadows, and of course, a really big eye. So you really want to make an animal really expressive if you're going to make more of a cartoon like you'd see in a movie. So you're going to make the eyes more expressive and, more having eyelashes. Although elephants have some really beautiful eyelashes. If you ever see a close-up photo or an elephant in real life, they have really big eyelashes to protect themselves from the dust. But isn't that fun? So, and if their eye is really wide open, that means that they are kind of making wrinkles and shadows around the eye as well, right? Okay. And then I've made this one have its mouth open because that's another way you make something look more cartoony. So I've got the mouth open and I'm gonna make him a little bit more like he's mad because he is stomping and spraying. So I'm gonna give him a little bit of a frown, and he's got this open mouth that I've put a highlight on his lip there. And then I'm making the tusks longer and more obvious, especially this front tusk compared to the back one. So that makes him more interesting. So we're just really wanting to push the realism from realistic proportions, just more fun and sassy, giving him more pizzazz, giving him more attitude. And then we want to give him a lot of activity too. So this one is stomping his foot. I want to have a little bit more highlights there on the foot, showing that he's lifting his foot and he's stomping it. So we've got some dust in there, okay? And then they can pick up water and spray it if they're mad. And I was watching that the other day when I was looking at a live webcam from Africa where the elephant came up to the water hole and was really mad that there was a rhino there. And of course, a rhinoceros itself is a really big, dangerous animal in the African savannah, but the elephant is the king. And so he came right up and he sprayed. And so I'm going to just make that spray really dark here. And we'll draw one together in a minute. I just want to give you more of an example. And you can see how this spray is really overlapping the elephant's rump and his tail. So we're not putting as much detail in there. We're letting those get smeared, right? And then let's see, we have some strong shadows also under his face and under his ears because he's really flapping those ears, and we can have some little movements there and stomping that foot. So little movements there. And then some really strong shadows. In fact, we could put some stronger shadows under here to make that really look like it's underneath. But can you see how you really do need to understand the anatomy of the real animal before you start drawing it as more of a character, right? So are there any questions? I see some live people here in the chat box. Are you guys ready to draw one that's more of a cartoon? And if you want, you can take a screenshot of this or of this. This is the one that was in the email and on the advertisement. So look at his big eye and he's kind of smiling. So this one's happy. It's wagging its tail and it's moving along. And this one is the opposite. He's a big bull and he's saying, "Get out of my way." So let's see. We've got some other photos here that we can work from. Let me see where I'm at. I'm trying to find one of the fun photos. And while you ask, if you want to ask any questions, that's a fun, now you can't see that one very well. This one, this male, well, you can't see that photo very well either. Let's see, let's do this one because you have this one. So remember, you got these high resolution images. And so I've got different elephants here in some kind of fun poses, including the ones we've talked about. Okay. And so we are going to draw this one. And yeah, so who's ready to draw with me? Moving on. And we are going to draw. I'm going to demonstrate drawing on this brown paper. So, or no, I think I'll use the gray paper just for fun. So I have two different colors of paper. You might not be able to tell very well except when they're close. And so you can get lots of papers, or you can even use construction paper if that's easier in your family's household. But it's nice to use a color of paper that's similar to the color of the animal you're drawing. And then all you have to do is add highlights and shadows. And I really love using these colored papers because then white things like the trunks and the whites of the eye and the elephant spring at the intruder can be a lot more obvious. Okay. So yeah, tell me in the chat box if you're going to draw along with me. Actually, I think that one's a little too hard. I think if you haven't drawn an elephant before, I think we're going to do this one. Let's look at this one for a sec. Yeah, I think we're going to draw. That one's a little too hard, I think. I think it's a little bit too hard. Okay, and so before we start drawing, we want to look at those proportions. Just like I said, those cartoonists who worked on the Lion King, they went all the way to Africa to watch lions and to draw them in the wild, right? So they were doing that. I have way too many pictures in front of me here. And your resources page actually has two. Oh yeah, we already did this one. That's good. Yeah, we already did this one. Good. So your resources page has two different documents you can download with lots of pictures of elephants. Okay, so we're going to start off making it look realistic, and then we're going to give it a little bit more pizzazz and personality, a little bit more like this one. Okay, isn't that one fun? So, and we already did look here. So we looked at this guy already. Now you can see this is a baby, like Dumbo the elephant. That's right. That's another famous elephant. Tell me in the chat box if you know the name of a famous elephant in real life or in books or movies, like Babar, or Mr. Snuffleupagus, or the Dumbo. Okay, so we already kind of looked at some of these basic proportions, and the baby is going to be a little different because it's going to have a bigger head relative to the body and even shorter legs than an adult. Okay, so the proportions are going to be different, and they naturally have a bigger eye. But let's maybe make this one look a little bit more fun. Maybe we'll make its trunk going out. Maybe he can be holding a flower or something. That would be fun. Maybe he's bringing a flower to his mama. And maybe we'll make him smiling with a bigger, happier eye. How does that sound to you? Okay. Okay. Um, guys are so quiet in the chat box today. I think we'll probably get more replay viewers since this was kind of a last minute thing. I forgot it was World Elephant Day, and elephants are one of my favorite things to draw. So I am going to just start off with this brown pencil, and then I can add the more highlights and shadows. Okay, so I'm just using these. Now, this pencil happens to have an eraser, but I'm not going to really use that. Again, I want us to be fast and free and fun. And, don't worry if you quote unquote make mistakes. It's just fun to see. I think it's fun to see those first try lines. It makes it a little bit more interesting, I think. Okay. All right. Okie dokie. So just like before, I'm going to make a box that kind of shows the whole area that my elephant's going to be in, including his tail. Because if you don't do that, you might get your proportions all wrong, and then if you start off just drawing the head, it might be way too big. So I like to pretend that my elephant is inside of a box, and I got to get him in there. And let me see if I can change the lighting again there. And yeah, you're not going to be able to see. Let me get the edge of this a little bit better. He's a little blowing out. There, you can see it a little bit better. Okay. So doesn't matter if you can't see all the wrinkles and all that stuff. We'll add those. So anyway, we've got kind of a box, and then we're going to put the elephant inside of it. So we've got that sort of triangular head, and the head is coming down to a trunk, and I'm going to have my trunk up here for fun. It's going to be holding a flower or something, okay? Because this is going to be a cartoony version after we get the realistic version, okay? And then we've got those big ears, and they're like a big triangle. You actually see the other ear sticking up there too, so that's fun. Okay. And I hope you can see this. So just like last time, we're just getting it boxed in, and then going to get the details. So the rest of the back comes here, and then it comes down real sharp, and we're going to have a fun tail. And then the whole body is kind of really thick compared to the legs. We're going to have a leg coming out here, and then here, and then here, and here. So those legs are super thick. So I'm going to make them showing that they're like big columns, just like the Greek Parthenon, whatever they call that thing. So this one's lifting its leg. You can see its knee, lifting it up. And then its other leg is lower. So you see how we just box everything in really symbolically first. And we're just moving that pencil. The more lines you can get on there, light and loose, the better. And if you can draw lighter than I am, that's even better, because I draw really dark so that you can see it. But I want you to be a little bit lighter. Okay, and so now I'm going to be a little firmer with my lines, continuing to look back and forth at my reference, but we're going to make him more fun looking. So we're going to make the eye bigger, the mouth open, and the trunk maybe holding a flower. Okay, but let's keep just getting those real proportions. So I'm going to darken up this head that has an angle here, and it's going to be up here with the trunk, and then we're gonna have a smile, and let's open her mouth, kinda like that maybe. And then there's gonna be a big eye with, the wrinkles. Diane, you said Jumbo. Isn't it Dumbo is one of them? Or is that a real adult, uh, a real live one? I think its name is Dumbo, Diane, not Jumbo, but anyway, maybe that's a real elephant. Okay, so there's the head more. Let's get that ear. Again, kind of a big triangle. And then there's this opening to the ear, because of course they have to have an opening to hear. So there's going to be the opening. And then the other ear is sort of in shadow. I'm just going to put that in shadow there. And then you can see the shoulder a bit, and then the rump, and then the fun expressive tail with some, there we go. And then let's see, where else are we going here? Okay, so let's add the front leg. So you can see this leg is coming right out from under its ear. And it's coming out, and then there is an angle there for the wrist. And the fun thing about doing cartoons is we don't have to worry about getting all of the proportions exact, especially in this quick class now, if you've never drawn before. And if somebody sees your drawing, you can just say, well, this is a cartoon. It's not supposed to be exact. And then they have this big old wrinkly elbow. It goes way up actually into there. You can see those wrinkles there. Diane said Google wrote that jumbo was in London Zoo Victorian times, where the word jumbo for larger things came from. Oh, wow, that's very interesting. Okay. Now let's see. We have this other belly here, and you see this knee is coming up into the belly. There's lots of wrinkles. And then we've got the ankle and the bigger foot, something like that. And then the other foot that's in the shade. And so this foot should be higher. And you can tell also it's up off of the ground because it's not touching the shadow. And we'll add highlights and shadows with the other pencils. So how we doing here? So now I'm going to switch to these pencils, my black and white charcoal pencils. Those come in different hardnesses. This one's really hard. And this one, I have well, where'd my soft one go? Here it is, soft. So it says if it's hard or it's soft. So often you might start a sketch with the hard charcoal pencil and then move to the soft one, which smears better. All righty. So now let's try to turn this into more of a cartoon. And again, we want to try to make it a little bit more fun and friendly looking. I think actually I made my head too small. I'm going to have to make that a little bit bigger. Because again, babies have a larger head, and I made this kind of small, but I can fix that. Again, we're not worried about being too exact here. So I'm going to start at the forehead here and make the head bigger and make it holding a flower. I think at the end I'll add a flower. And then I'm going to make this mouth come down here. There we go. I think that's better proportions for a baby. And then we're going to have, we'll add the eye later. Okay, and then the ear. And the ear in the baby looks really smooth and perfect, but a lot of times in the adults, Their ears get torn from fighting and stuff. So that's the ear. And then we have a shoulder and a rump and a fun little tail. And their tail is actually has two little pieces to it. You can't really see it in that side view, but they do have two parts to them. Some of them show that better than others. Okay, and then kind of a little wrinkled butt and big wiggly. We'll add all the wrinkles and highlights and shadows in a minute, but let's just get this. We got that foot placed right on the floor there. And then that big wrinkly elbow, like some old person's elbow. We'll add those wrinkles in a minute. Okay, so we just want to get the silhouette first. And then that other one, oh yeah, I kind of forgot to show, this is more like the shoulder, the neck here, and the leg is behind it. And again, don't worry if your proportions are off. Mine aren't exact because again, we are turning this into more of a cartoon. So now let's add that fun eye. Want to make a big happy white spot, and then there we go, and then some marks, and then let's make this smiling. That's cute. Make them smiling. All right. And then I want to add some shadows. We see some really strong shadows in this because it's super sunny here. And you can tell the sun is coming from over this way and casting shadows. So that ear behind is in the shadow. And there's lots of shadow under the chest here. And lots of shadow on this leg behind. And then the cast shadow, and you see, again, the shadow is only touching the feet that are on the ground. It's not touching here. It might look like it is, but it's certainly not touching this foot. Let's see. Oh, we can add the toenails. They've got big toenails. You know, an elephant has really sensitive feet. And if you looked at the bottom of the foot, it would have all of these lines on it, like we have on our hands, that is completely unique. And the elephant can feel through its feet, and it can actually feel the rumbling of the earth of distant herds. All righty. So let's add some more fun wrinkles. Yeah, elephants have lots of wrinkles around the elbow and then in the belly and where it's bent here. And then, yeah, there's a little bit more shadowing here and maybe some shadowing under here and here and maybe some shadowing here. And just a little bit of shadowing there. Okay. All right. So let's make him more fun now. Let's add some highlights. And this photo isn't very good because it's really blown out, but you can see in this photo really better highlights and shadows. And the more you observe something in nature, the more you know where the shadows should be. Like we would have a highlight on the top of the head and a highlight on the top of the trunk, especially all those muscles. They have hundreds of muscles on their trunks so that they can move their trunk in lots of different ways. I think there's something like 600 muscles on their trunk. And then there'll be a highlight on the the top of the ear and highlights on certain parts of their legs, uh, and the highlights on their back here. Okay, maybe on their knee. And you see I'm just using this side here. All right. So we're making them look fun. Okay. And we could make some movement lines. So the baby's swishing its tail. It's trying to run really fast to catch up to its mother because it wants to bring the mother a present. So let's make a flower. It's gonna give a bouquet. Let's have a bouquet of flowers here or something. And if you wanted to add some color here, you could. Maybe, let's see, maybe some red roses because the baby really loves its mother, and maybe it's Valentine's Day. I don't know if you can see that in the video there. Maybe some highlights to those flowers. How's that? Okay. So we are perfectly on time. I would love to, I'm putting in the chat box. I put in the chat box the link for you to come on screen and share so that we can see what you drew. Or if you have any questions about drawing things in a more cartoony style. Again, here's my other example. You don't need to see me. Let's see. Here's my other examples. This one's really obvious, and this one's a little bit more subtle. But both of these show a lot of movement, exaggerated features, especially the eyes are bigger, the mouth is more expressive, and there's movement lines. You can see dark shadows, you can see dust, you can see the flapping of the ears. And so, yeah, those I took a little bit more time on than these. So they're not as good, but you can see the idea here. Okay, now, yeah, we just have a few people still joining us live. And I did want to mention, I want to, if you like learning about drawing and drawing things more fun and in the kind of a cartoony animated movie, I have a link that I'm adding just now in the chat box to my video that's on YouTube. It's part of my series that I did a couple years ago on drawing the animals of the Lion King. And that link I put, that YouTube link, is links to my workshop on drawing Mufasa and the other lions in the Lion King. And I'll show you a lot of examples, clips from the movies, showing how realistic, but also how exaggerated the animals are to show more anger and more fear and more happiness, especially through those looks of the face, exaggerated eyes and ears and movement and smiles and frowns and all that. So then, and I also have a link here. If you feel like supporting these free events, I had a link to donate. That's christineelder.com/donate if you want to help support these live events. So anyway, I did put a link to share. It's the link that says StreamYard.com. And if you click on that, you can come up on screen with me. Don't be shy. And you can ask any questions, or if you have any stories about elephants, if you want to share your drawings with me. But yeah, so I am also creating a new program that's focused on kids, on youth, approximately age like 8 to 12 or 13 to learn about wildlife through the act of drawing them like we are today. So it's a whole new program I'll be telling you guys more about in the future. So, yeah, anyway, today is World Elephant Day. There are 3 species of elephants, and today we drew the African elephant. And unfortunately, many of them are declining. In fact, I read that since I was born, there's been a 70% decline in African elephants, for example. That means that out of a herd of 100 that would have been born when I was a kid, uh, only 30 would remain because of habitat loss and hunting and that kind of thing. So that's one reason I do these programs, to teach you about endangered animals and that they need our help. And the first way to help them is to learn about them and tell other people about their plight. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed drawing with me. And I hope you'll share your sketches with me. You can go to my website at christinelder.com and go to the contact page and share, or just email me. My email address is really easy to remember. It's hello@christinelder.com. So I hope you enjoyed this quick drawing session where we learned a little bit about how to draw a realistic elephant, and then also how to make them a little bit more fun, like you might if you were training to be a cartoonist to animate real life movies in the theater. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with for World Elephant Day. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.